Hello, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today, we're going to do a fast and loose watercolor landscape painting. And we have an 8x10 sheet of 90-pound Stonehenge Legion paper. It's slightly toned, ever so slightly, so we'll kind of jump in and get started. I'm going to grab some burnt umber and kind of map out this painting. So we're going to play wet and wet. We're going to push things around and we're going to add and subtract. Okay, so this lets you explore what you like, let things start to form, and it takes some compositional guesswork out there, just kind of letting that free flow happen. You can always backtrack, you can always wipe it out, etc. I've been on a big kick with the landscapes that are shown by Dennis Sheehan and John Francis Murphy. John Francis Murphy, late 1800s. Dennis Sheehan, he is still around and still painting. And a lot of those have kind of a deceptively simple composition where we're looking at some sort of tree group, maybe a few tree groups, kind of on the horizon line, but a little bit closer than that. And often has some reflective water and different textures in a field coming towards us. Now, with the sky, I put very soft effects. Once again, paper towel, you can go back and forth, add and subtract. One thing I've been playing around with lately is taking a second brush, grabbing some white gouache, and pushing the lightest value. So within watercolor, there's a lot of different ways we can do that. We can leave that space blank and empty, just the white of the paper. Since this is slightly toned, it's not perfectly white. You can go in with gouache and lighten that up. You can use a brush later on to lift. You can also use magic eraser. There's just a lot of different ways you can go about doing it. And a lot of people like to use, what's it called? Masking fluid. I'll have some reflection of water down here. Not quite sure just yet. Come with a little bit of white on this side too. Okay. Back to the large Hake brush. Now that I have an idea of the composition and where I want my values, I want to start bringing this line that the tree rests on, kind of set that in place and looking for just a little bit of depth behind it. So I just passed that squirrel mop with some burnt umber. Okay. Inside this tree, on the inner leaves, I expect one of my darkest darks. I'm flattening the paper out right here, by the way. That little vertical tree line or shadow coming out is going to be dark. And then whatever I decide with the edge of water, we'll definitely have some darks in there. A little bit of movement on the grass leading to that background. You can play with some vertical foliage, little bushes or trees in that far background right along that edge. Then if we want to push this dark further, so we're wet and wet, so I'm going to grab some raw umber. Just trying to build up my darks. One thing that I want to point out is that I'm just working from dried paint today. If I had some fresh paint out, it would be coming out a lot stronger, a lot darker, and would probably be easier to build up. A little texture. We'll leave the sky alone. Honestly, at this point, you can kind of fiddle around a little bit more if you want, but we're probably good to go with drying it off. So let's pause the camera. We'll hit it with a blow dryer. All right, now that it's dry for the most part, I've been experimenting a lot with just kind of glazing at some point or another. So here, I'm just grabbing a squirrel mop, a different one, just because it's clean, and grabbing some water. I've been glazing with the gamboge, a little bit of Indian yellow, playing along those lines. But I think I want to grab some alizarin crimson for us to see what that'll look like washed over this. I don't want to pass over the same spot each time, just because then we'll start lifting up what's underneath. We're just looking to get some color and see what's going on. Okay, kind of warmed it up a little bit. We now can paint wet and wet if we want to, or we can dry things off. But here, I'm going to continue now wet and wet again. And you can play around any way that you want. It's all about just developing your own approach and what works for you. This is that smaller squirrel mop, which I've been feeding stuff in. Since everything's wet and wet, you're going to want more pigment on the brush than water. Otherwise, you're going to start getting the cauliflower effects in the backfills. Not the backfills, just the blooms. So if you like that effect, that's perfectly fine to use. But just know that if you're having issues, that's probably what it is. A little bit of vertical components, just start getting that idea there. Here's that edge of the water facing us. It's a little bit of reflection from that edge coming down. Let's grab a little bit of black. I like using black in watercolors and paintings, but you can use your own mixtures. You could have used ultramarine mixed with that burnt umber. You can use Payne's Gray, which is a mixture of black and blue, depending on the company. You can mix ultramarine and burnt sienna, so you have a lot of different options. Now, I do have the gamboge on this palette, so I'm going to grab a little bit. Let's put around that edge. Kind of that stereotypical glow you'll see with a backlit tree. And I'm going to pause and do a dry off. All right, just hit it with the blow dryer really quick. I'm gonna grab that squirrel mop that I used for the glazing. I'm gonna grab gamboge. I wanna glaze a little bit over here. Let's see. Okay, that gives a good, interesting sky. Let's grab some of it down here in this water. Pass a little bit over the grass, the landscape, see where we're at. Okay, another quick dry off. Okay, now there's a lot of different pushing back and forth that we can do. I would like to take this experiment into exploring just kind of finer details, but still remaining fast and loose. So this is yellow ochre. I wanted to see what it looks like if we set it in this background. If we want to mellow it out, we can lift some and play around. I grab some ultramarine and then some burnt umber. I talked about mixing a dark from it earlier, so let's try that. Looking for that edge right here. I want to push that yellow ochre strip back. Also building up these concepts. Kind of scrubbing around, letting those textures happen. Let's bring more light into the closer land. So what I'm trying to do right here is using bigger swatches of the yellow ochre so that it appears closer than the thin swatch back there. Let's grab that dark mix again. That's ultramarine and burnt umber. Start getting ideas in here. Now, I did put a lot down. I am drying quite a bit with these experiments, so I'm going to do a quick dry off again. I'm going to go back to the hake for a little bit. I haven't washed it off or dried it off. It's still wet. I want to see if I can grab my dark mixture or black, whatever one you want to experiment with. And now clear up, not so much clear up, but add foliage and stuff along this edge. That would be in shadow because the light's behind it. I want to see what happens if we try a little bit of grass in there. Might be a little too wild. Try to bring it to a point. A little grass up and a little reflections down. Am I liking that? Okay, it's interesting so far. I'm gonna dance this around. Looking for kind of contours, movement in the grass. Okay. Another thing I've been wanting to do for the longest time, and I'm always experimenting with it, is seeing how dark I can get my dark. Let's see what we can put in. Okay, I'm gonna kind of move around a painting, not just stagnate at one spot. So here's some of the gamboge. This brush is still a little dirty. how that affects us. I could always play around with washing some more in up here and grabbing some water to spread out what I put down. I believe I have a, let me see, I'm gonna look for it. Here you go, I had some old bristle brushes for oil painting. Kind of scrub out, see how far we can go back to a kind of a white. So I'm just wetting it, scrubbing it, and then hitting with a paper towel to lift that up. And also can bring a little bit of highlights here. We'll explore that as well. Maybe the light's coming in and catching some parts of the land. So it's about exploring, seeing what textures you can get, how you can move things back and forth. And then once you do that, you can grab your squirrel mop or just anyone. Here's a number 4 that I just grabbed. Grab a little bit of color. Just see what that looks like there. Okay, I'm going to do another quick dry off. Okay. That being said, I'm going to experiment with the fan brush. I like the fan brush for different contours and to slowly build something up. I'm going to grab some alizarin crimson. I want to see how that looks over the dark. Let's see what interesting effects we can get. I feel like the for me, the fan brush, when I use it to build up just a little bit of more dark tonality. And since we do have the red in the sky, let's see how much of it we could bring down onto the land itself. Find some red in the water. Let's see if the red can push these shadows darker. Grab more of the dark. Some grass coming up. A little idea of reflections of grass. Grass poking out the water itself. Maybe this is a really shallow pond or pool. Dance around for grass textures. Continue to build up this dark. Take a chance with, let's see, I'm gonna grab a small brush. A little bit of white gouache. Let's get a little bit of yellow ochre in there. Let's see if we can create little sky holes, little bird holes. or we could pass it around the edge. And then we have more of a lost edge taking place as opposed to a hard edge. Just dancing it around, really not going too planned out. Just looking to see what we can form. Okay. Let's do a pause and another dry off. Since we're really deep into experimenting, let's see how some more alizarin crimson might look. See if that ties things together. Okay. Well, before I hit it with the blow dryer, let's see how far we can push the white. Okay. Okay. Everything is completely wet, so blow dryer. So we definitely experimented quite a bit, and I apologize for all the pauses for the blow dryer, but that's part of the experimental process. I want to now kind of like pick in little spots. I'm going to grab some ultramarine blue, and I think I'll get some light red oxide for a distant purple. And I want to see what we can put on that far horizon line. Just little dots for trees, just changing that shape. And looking to see how that affects the sense of depth, how that far distant yellow ochre approaches the sky. And probably get a second tone in there just by feeding a little bit more in. And just get a little bit of variety in there. Even grab a little bit of yellow ochre. See what happens there. Probably also grab a little bit of white gouache and lighten the part up right by that sky. Okay. All right, you can see how it definitely adds another aspect of depth. I'm gonna grab the number 1. I'm just gonna go for darks, for blacks right now. See what I can get to happen inside this tree. Use the side of the rigger to put darks out right there. Just looking for little tree branches that we might see. We wouldn't see much at that distance. So this is more probably expressionist, but it'll soften in and it'll blend in. And I can always grab more dark with the heat brush, stipple that in. Okay, we'll add it for a little bit of texture. I want this foreground to top. So I'm going to grab some yellow ochre and look at glazing with yellow ochre. Just grab a really light wash. Now that we're at it, the number 1, just going with black. You can see what I can pick out along this little edge. The grass. Let some big, tall pieces of grass come up. This is wet and wet right here from that glaze of yellow ochre. Just little bits of grass popping up through. Okay. Let's do one last dry off, see where we're at. All right, I'm gonna leave this here. I'm gonna probably paint some off camera, but this is where we're gonna stop this one. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, follow, and check out my Patreon down below if you want to support this channel. And thank you to everybody that does. You'll have a great day. Take care.